Executive Officer of the UCC Cornerstone Fund, and I want to welcome you to our panel discussion this morning on social enterprise in the church. In the room today, we have with us lay leaders, clergy, nonprofit leaders, and the board of directors for the United Church of Christ Cornerstone Fund. And they come from far and wide, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, and the leaders in the room are primarily from Northeast Ohio. So welcome to all of you, and thank you to the South Yucca United Church of Christ for graciously hosting us this morning for what I think is going to be a fabulous discussion. Those of you who aren't familiar with the Cornerstone Fund, our mission is joining together in faith to invest in and build community. So for the last 25 or so years, we've had the privilege of lending to churches and other faith-based organizations, and we've helped more than 275 congregations, more than 675 congregations and other organizations with more than $275 million in financing. And recently, we've committed more than $20 million to social enterprise projects. So this is a topic that's very dear to us. The next hour or so, you're going to hear from an incredibly esteemed panel, area's leading voices in social entrepreneurship and faith-based ventures. They'll be discussing the intersectionality of church and social enterprise, and with social enterprise defined as the movement of creating not-for-profit and for-profit businesses with a core vision to make a better world. Moderating this morning's panel is my new friend, Maurice Purnell, one of Cleveland's recognized leaders as both a philanthropist and business person. Today, Maurice is managing partner of the Managed and Strategic Services consulting firm, CLE Consulting, and he's formerly served as Chief Financial Officer for Word Church, Greater Cleveland's largest church. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Sorry. Excuse me. Yeah, for a second.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to do a little better than this. We're in the house of God today. We can do a lot better than that. Good afternoon, everybody. There we go. I need you guys to go with me on this journey today. So, once again, I want to thank you, Maria, for that great introduction, and definitely an honor to be here. I want to first give a thank you to the South Euclid United Church of Christ family and to Pastor Courtney Jenkins for this opportunity today. But we're going to go ahead and jump right in. You guys ready? Okay. And to our esteemed board, glad a few of you I know prior to this, but definitely getting ready to learn a lot more about everybody who's sitting on this panel. So excited about that, but we'll go ahead and get started. So as many of you know, social enterprise are organizations that simply shoulder their responsibility to be good citizens, both inside and outside of the organization. On this panel this morning, we have individuals on the front lines of social enterprise, as well as those who built these organizations from the ground up, from strategic plans to financing. Some of the panelists who come from churches and faith-based organizations, and others who simply champion social enterprise and social good. We'll start off with Jeff. Jeff, we'll go ahead. Let me start with you and first tell us a little about building hope in the city and common threads.
Good, thanks very much. Jeff Stredney, Director of Social Enterprise for Building Hope in the City. How many people here are most are from Cleveland? I know there's some not. Like, how many are Clevelanders? All right, how many are East Siders? I hate to start in East and West. Okay, how many are from West Side? All right, very few. Maybe you've heard of us if you're from the West Side. You probably haven't if you're from the East Side, and that's because Building Hope in the City is a 16-year-old faith-based nonprofit that kind of birthed out of a resurgence in Trinity Lutheran Church on the near west side of Cleveland in the late 1990s, early 2000s. We didn't really have language for it back then, but essentially what the church started to do was asset-based community development. How about if instead of dictating what happens in a community, we just ask the people in the community what it is that matters to them, what is needed there, and then provide them the ability to have ownership of all those things with resourcing and support. As that grew, it quickly grew beyond that denomination. And so Building Hope in the City was created to be the vehicle that could take that partnership and extend it to all kinds of parts throughout the city, the West Side, other churches, other denominations, other parts of society. And the journey of Building Hope is one where I wasn't a part of its inception, but I'm certainly a part of it now. It's a story of doing one thing well and then watching God continue to grow that. And so Building Hope in the City started by asking the community, what do you do well? Or what do you want to do well? And they said the kids. And so they started a tutoring program because education was seen as a pathway out. Well, as Building Hope in the City started to build into the children in and around the near West Side neighborhoods, they quickly built relationships with the parents and realized there's a lot of great people who are for the city, from the city, but they're not resourced to reach the city, to have the dreams and the visions that they have for their community fulfilled. And so urban leader development became one of the heartbeats for Building Hope in the City while they're journeying with children. If you follow anything related to immigration law or refugees, Cleveland for many, many years has been one of the higher proportion cities of a city that takes on refugees and allows them to be settled here. And in those neighborhoods, we had a high refugee population that resettled. And so kids were starting to show up to tutoring that did not look like the typical kids from the urban city. And there were hijabs and other garments that were worn. And so as these kids came to tutoring, you love God by loving those he puts around you. So embrace and love these students. And then their parents started to come to learn English. And that began a journey to understand those families and to journey and partner with refugees and immigrants on their journey toward wholeness and to health and to understanding things here. So we got urban leader development. We're journeying with refugees and immigrants. And then after a period of time with that, you realize no matter what programs that you're wrapping around someone, at the end of the day, meaningful wage jobs, work environments that promote the wholeness and the health of the individual, and safe, stable places to live matter. They matter to the heart of God. They really matter to the people in those communities. And so Building Hope realized if we're going to continue to want to be about the people that God's brought to us, we have to do something in these arenas. And that's 4 years ago this month. God led me on a journey to partner with Building Hope in the City into social enterprise. How do we do the business of doing good? How do we create ventures that can create, yes, income for the nonprofit, but also great on-ramps to employment for so many wonderful people that are served and career pathways beyond that? And Common Threads was our first venture. It's an upscale thrift store in Fairview Park, Ohio. A conversation like this.
Oh, wow. Great stuff. Thanks for sharing that with us, Jeff. I want to even dive deeper. So now I see it aligns with the individuals we have right here based on how you started the conversation. So I think as we dive in, you guys will really uncover some more about the importance of social enterprise. So, Nichelle, you serve as a board president of SEA Change, a social enterprise accelerator. I understand that SEA Change provides training to social entrepreneurs. What training do you believe a congregation needs to have in order to transform themselves into a social entrepreneurship?
Yes, so for Sea Change, which stands for Social Enterprise Accelerator, we've been around for about 5 years and actually have been supporting social entrepreneurs, whether that's on the nonprofit side or the for-profit side, in launching their ideas or growing their ideas by providing a course-based curriculum in addition to access to connections and access to capital. So a big part of what we've been doing as an organization is working with people who have an idea that has a social impact, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit, and helping them to understand how to put some of the business principles behind that so that it really can be sustainable and scalable. And it's not in a position where it's having to rely solely on foundation funding, but rather being able to provide, fee-based services or providing consulting services, something that you're getting paid for that allows them to continue to help and serve others in the community, make an environmental impact in some cases, while also being in a position where they can be sustainable financially as well. So we actually provide a 14-week course accelerator program for all of these social entrepreneurs and helping them to understand how do you go about putting together your logic model when it comes to the actual social mission that you have in place? What do you do about creating your business model, your financial planning, financial projections, which you understand the importance of that, right? And especially because on the financial side, it's different than how we typically are doing it from the church perspective. So, and it can be very different also from the nonprofit perspective. So that financial modeling, when you're starting to put these business principles into it, is so crucial for the sustainability of these organizations. But we also hit on different things as it relates to partnership, marketing and branding, so that we can really help them to grow effectively. So we provide these services through in-person trainings. We've done it here in Cleveland. We've also done it in Columbus as well. But there's been such a demand for our services that we've actually have expanded and created a new affiliate program that allows us to work with organizations all around the country by providing them the actual curriculum that they can then just use and tailor and teach social entrepreneurs in their own communities as well. So we're really excited about the national impact that we're able to have in helping people that have a social mission in their hearts to have a social impact, to put the business principles in place so they can be sustainable and scalable.
Yeah, so Nichelle, I want you to kind of elaborate on that, because now you talked about the individual, but the key thing that we see, if everybody has this booklet, it talks about social enterprise and the church. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate, how have you utilized the programming that you have to work with the church to ensure, that they're also, going just outside from behind the pulpit to actually offering these services to the community? Because I posted something on social media this morning, and I asked the question, what is the role of the church today? And you will be surprised the answers I got back. Some people said, it is to save souls, to redeem the lost, and business has no place in the church. Nothing beyond, religious development of individuals should be within the doors of the church. So it was very intriguing to hear some of the answers. And these were from some pastors as well from across the country. So I would ask you to really unpack that from that perspective.
Yeah. So for us, Sea Change really is open to working with anyone and everyone. So whether it's individuals or organizations, and we have had organizations who've worked with us as well. So where we've had organizations to come to us, typically what we've seen is kind of twofold. One, maybe, and this could be the church, that they have an idea in mind of being able to create a social enterprise entity, but need some help in kind of fleshing that out and what that looks like. So Sea Change is able to actually help them in creating and kind of massaging what that idea can look like, and creating what we like to call an MVP, your minimal viable product, and doing it on a smaller scale, testing it out, making the tweaks before you have to spend all the money and time investing on a large scale. So that's one way that we're able to work with organizations and entities like the church as well. Another way could be, especially for churches that have a lot of space, we've worked with organizations where they have actually created their space to become kind of like an incubator and an accelerator for other social enterprises. So one of the beauties of that is that you can actually incubate your own ideas as the church, in addition to incubating other ideas in the community as well. And through the curriculum, for instance, that Sea Change provides, you can then provide that course curriculum and that training to help all of these organizations to build and scale out their businesses, and then being able to also help them to access funding as well.
And that's good, what you said, because one thing I told my partner, Mel Treason, who's here with us today as well, is one thing churches have is we have people and we have space. So we have to think about those resources that we have in place. But Julia, we'll go ahead, move on to you, and say, as the founding director of the Family Ministry Center, can you tell us about the FMC and what you find the biggest challenge or gap between how a church defines ministry and social enterprise defines business?
Okay, great. Thanks. And what you just said was a great lead-in to what we are about in terms of Bay Presbyterian Church, which is an evangelical Presbyterian church out in Bay Village, Ohio. for over 50 years, has been involved extensively throughout the greater Cleveland area. And so 9 years ago, the Catholic Diocese was beginning to close a lot of campuses throughout the region, as well as consolidating those campuses. And Bay just asked the question, who other than Bay Pres is going to be able to purchase one of those campuses? And they were looking for proposals where the entire campus could be utilized. And because a lot of our work was on the near west side, we went and looked at the old Blessed Sacrament campus. And then I was asked to be the lead visionary on putting together a proposal and then go ahead and purchase that space, which consists of 5 buildings, 68,000 square feet, and 1.74 acres. And when we bought it 9 years ago, part of what we didn't even know or realize at that point is we're literally in our backyard. You can see Metro Health, and so the transformation of Metro Health is going on, and we've really had a seat at the table in terms of in Clark Fulton and with our Community Development Corporation and with our local councilwoman in terms of a lot of the transformation that's been going on there. And so in many ways we've been viewed as what's called a beachhead. So if you think all the way back to America and Normandy, is part of the role of the church can sometimes be to figure out like where's a beachhead where you want to make really an impact in a city or in a neighborhood or in a very specific area or even around the globe, and then how do you resource that and how do you support that. So Bay literally bought the property, sent me down there as the full-time director. I started 9 years ago, and part of what is unique about Bay Presbyterian Church is that we have always done our work in the city through partnerships, that we have this inherent belief that those that are in the ground in the context of local neighborhoods or in third world countries, wherever it might be, are the ones that have the expertise and have the knowledge of what's going on in those local communities. So what we have done is we have taken and converted all this space into usable space for lots of ministry nonprofits, and we've become a faith-based collaboration center. And so the old convent, for instance, is a home now for former homeless military veterans and homeless men. Double residence was made into longer-term transitional housing for former military vets and homeless men. We now have 2 schools on the campus. We're in the 15th year of working with a middle school that's looking at kids as God's masterpieces and helping them get on the right track again so they can graduate from high school. And now this fall we've started with a K through 2 Christian academy, believing that long term, in terms of to really bring about systemic change, you got to start with the youngest of kids, and then that school will eventually go to 12th grade. It's based on a school out of Minneapolis where 95% of those urban kids go on to higher education. And so part of the intersection that I see in terms of with the church and social enterprise is that we really have to take seriously that in the midst of our times, there are just a ton of social justice issues that that God cares deeply about, as well as just breaks his heart. And we are meant to be the restorative, redemptive instrument in terms of bringing about change throughout our world. And so we're meant to be on the front line. So when it is just like, okay, you saved the lost or you brought somebody to faith, that's just the beginning of the equation, because then it should become so that you can literally be a world changer. So we're trying to do that through how we build capacity of our partners, as well as provide a really high quality facility for them so that they don't have to actually do a lot of those things themselves. So a lot of what I do is property management, which isn't very glamorous, but it means our partners don't have to do those things. And in addition, right now we have 4 different congregations that actually meet on our campus. So sometimes people in the Clark Fulton neighborhood will refer to our area and our campus as the United Nations on Sunday because of who comes and goes from there. So it's just been really exciting with that. And so a lot of times what I say is my job is literally getting cats to share the same litter box. So that's not a very nice way maybe to say it, but it is. I mean, it's just the reality of it is like we all have, we want this door locked or this door unlocked or the temperature this or that or whatever. And so we constantly are looking at like what's the best purpose of like our space as well as our resources. And with that, I had an extensive background in higher education and nonprofit, and I was determined that I was not going to found another nonprofit that became solely dependent on grants, because I saw over and over again people start these incredible things with like the mission at the heart of what they're doing. And then over years, it would just be like they were so desperate for money, they would lose their focus and they would go after money and put money over mission. And so we've been able to literally, for every dollar that Bay Presbyterian has invested in the campus over the last 8 years, we have been able to match that more than dollar for dollar at this point. Because all of our partners pay a fee to actually, through a license or a lease, to have the space that they have. We've done a number of fee-for-service programs, such as hosting short-term mission trips, as well as we have been the proud recipient of 2 rather large grants from the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, so we could do some stuff with sustainability and permaculture, because we believe beauty is not meant to be just out there, but beauty is also meant to be in the midst of the urban center, so that we're creating a place truly of shalom, where people see it as a place and a people of refuge where they want to come and be a part of it.
Oh, man, amazing, amazing. Hey, yeah, definitely give her a hand for that one. Now, one common theme I'm hearing, and you asked us to raise our hands if we're East Siders, so I'm hearing a lot of West Side programming going on, so I hope somebody's going to address what we're doing on the East Side, but no, good stuff, though. But Christina and Daniel, you both serve on the front lines of social enterprise with Bloom Bakery and Cafe. Please tell us a little about Bloom, and then share with us a few of the lessons that you've learned in launching and operating this business.
Okay, for those of you who don't know, Bloom Bakery is a social mission that was launched by Towards Employment a few years back. The mission side of Bloom is to help our participants who have adversities to employment. So whether it's re-entry or have never had the proper environment for a good job or just lack of training, those sort of things. So we basically want to, for instance, our mission statement is to produce, prepare, and prosper. So we ultimately prepare the individual so they're able to produce, and to produce a paycheck, to produce a rent check, to produce a livelihood, to produce means for their children. And then that way they can prosper and be able to take care of themselves. The business part of Bloom has a few different facets. We have 2 retail locations. Our main bakery is at Cleveland State University campus, and we also have a little retail spot there. Then we have our flagship, which is downtown Cleveland at 200 Public Square in the Huntington building. We also have a wholesale business, which I've developed over the last year and a half, building relationships throughout the city where we provide restaurants, catering companies, what else? Grocery stores with bread and their bread needs. And then we also do corporate catering. So basically, you guys will enjoy a lunch from Bloom Bakery today, all made by our participants. What was the second part of the question?
So really, I wanted Daniel to chime in as well and just kind of give his perspective with Towards Employment.
Sure. First of all, we're not West Side, we're not East Side, we're downtown. So
Okay.
there you go.
Okay.
How about that?
So Jeff didn't have us raise our hand about that. So
I'm Dan Garvin. I'm a career coach with Towards Employment. And let me just say, many times people have asked me, I tell them I'm a career coach, and they say, well, what's that? So I get honored to have an opportunity to talk about that today. Towards Employment has a series of programs to help people, A, find employment, B, maintain employment, and C, advance in employment. As we were talking earlier, career pathways. The social enterprise of Bloom Bakery was for those that are interested in a culinary pathway. All right, that's one of the reasons it was designed and put into effect, so to speak. What a career coach does is offer the support that the participants need to help maintain employment and reach their goals in advance. So what we basically do is offer support to those participants. We call them trainees, employees. They are there for 9 months to a year, gaining all their skills that they need. A lot of them have earned Safe Certs to move on into the culinary field. Those that are also interested in retail and customer service move on to those jobs. So after 9 months to a year, we transition you out now that you've gained all these skills, and build your resume into finding that career path where you're making more money and you're earning benefits and retirement. You know, it's interesting too, as we deal with these participants, many of them lack work experience or have no work experience. And I want to just share a couple stories. We had a young lady right before Christmas do a interview for us. And it was the first time, she's 21, 22 years old, that she was able to buy Christmas presents for her children. All right, that's social enterprise at its finest, if you ask me. All right. Others have obtained education, their GEDs. What you see is this: what employment can do is build self-confidence, self-esteem, a purpose. All right, and that's really the heart of what we're doing at Bloom Bakery. We offer support, reinforcing good decision-making. That's huge, right? Support in, if there's a housing issue, or support in daycare. We want to really tackle and eliminate those challenges that keep you from maintaining employment. Most of our participants come from low socioeconomic status, and we all know the problem and challenges that come with that, right? So what I do pretty much is to reinforce all that. They really, really enjoy those skills. Most of the people that work at Bloom Bakery are from Towards Employment, our mission. They're gaining those skills. If you ever get a chance, please come in.
And I just had an opportunity to meet with some of the staff this week and the prior week, and definitely great program, and it's going to be really impactful, to a lot of our entrepreneurs and ministries across the city. So thank you for the great work you guys do. I'm going to move on to Dale. Dale, Dale, I understand that you are a lay leader at Trinity Cathedral in downtown Cleveland. Can you share with us how Trinity is working to engage social enterprise and expand its ministry offerings from the urban garden to your rental space?
Sure. Thank you. Trinity Cathedral is the cathedral church for the Episcopal Diocese of Ohio. The tagline for the Episcopal Diocese is, love God, love your neighbor, change the world. So with that in mind, in 2002, it was a collaboration between the cathedral and the diocese, and we built Trinity Commons. Trinity Commons was shared community space. That's what we were creating at that time. That will also include music, art, education, civic conversation, and collective action, which is central to who we are and what we serve in our community. The Commons currently houses both the diocese and, of course, the cathedral offices. We have rental space on Euclid Avenue. We have a cafe, we have a Subway, and then we also, in partnership with Cleveland State University, have veteran services in the third space. Upstairs in our gallery, we sponsored many different things. Right now, starting next week, we will be sponsoring the Undesigned the Red Line that has been at the Y and up in Mount Pleasant, from what I understand. So that will be starting next week. We will host that for 6 weeks. The ministries of the cathedral, two of our biggest pieces are social justice, which is seen through GCC, which is Greater Cleveland Congregations. There is also the Episcopal Peace Fellowship, which works nationally, and the Anti-Death Penalty Group, and then there is also Welcome to America, the refugee settlement that we work with. Another piece of our ministry that is out is we have an urban farm at 35th and Euclid, 35th and Cedar, I'm sorry. And we grow over 3,000 pounds of vegetables every year. That in turn is taken to Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries and is used in the meals that they prepare for the homeless shelters. In turn, on some Sundays, we also, part of our hunger ministry is a place at the table. We have, at noon, we have a meal, a hot meal for the homeless population. Some of the meals that come to us come from Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries. So in essence, the food is in a general circle. It all comes back to us. The other piece of that is Food for Families at Marion Sterling School. Right now we're in reevaluation of that. We found that we were losing some of the population. The school has lost population. The neighborhood is losing population. So we need to reevaluate exactly what does that neighborhood need? What does the community around us need? Another piece of that is Cleveland State. As you've read in the national news, students are not finding that they can afford meal plans. They have to make a decision between buying books and buying food. So we're also looking at a piece that maybe we may open a pantry for students at the university. These are all very important pieces of who we are at Trinity. And Trinity's done it for many years, but it was the Commons that kind of brought this all together and expanded out. One last piece is, behind us is a Victorian building. It was built in 1897 as a church house. We are looking to partnership with Cleveland State and possibly opening that space up. The bishop has spoke with the president and of the university and is looking to possibly make it a mixed-use center. It could become a Pratt Center where students are coming out of foster care and going to university. There's a lot of different ideas out there, but as part of the community and reaching out, that's a big piece also.
Oh man, thanks for sharing that, Dale. The part about students, something you may never have thought about, that students would actually be, battling between the meal plan versus books. So, thanks for the work that you're doing as well. Michelle, while not social enterprise requires physical space or real estate, we kind of talked about space and people, we also know that churches have a lot of it. Can you share some examples with us about past participants you have engaged with that leverage space?
Yeah. So for us, we've seen it play out in a few ways. So whether it's a matter of an organization a social enterprise has actually partnered with a nonprofit entity to use their space to provide their services has been very common. So we have an organization specifically, Upcycle, where they actually sell kind of reused, recycled goods, but they've partnered with a CDC to actually sell their goods out of their space. So there's an opportunity of being able to do something similar like that, but in the church space. In addition to that, we actually have had another organization, Cleveland Co-Labs, which is actually a social enterprise co-working space. So basically what they ended up doing was renting out space and then being able to allow other social enterprises for a leasing fee, in a sense, paying rent to use the office space, to then be able to operate out of that while also providing all these other additional services. So, there's opportunities of doing something like that as well, which kind of goes back to my point earlier around, being able to use the space to create, an incubator in a sense. But you can even start off with just like a small scale of first starting off with providing services to social enterprises. And the reason why I'm pushing this concept of being able to support social enterprises within the church, but also within the community, is because just within the few years that we have been operating, we've seen that our social enterprises have been able to generate over $2.3 million in revenue. We've also seen that over 130 jobs have been created because we've been able to support social enterprises. So that's a benefit of the church could be able to do that for the community as well, of being a space where they can provide this training and this learning to social enterprises within the church organization or the institution as well, for ideas that you may have or other church entities may have, but also providing a space for other community organizations and individuals who may have social enterprise ideas as well. Because we've had people who've gone through our social enterprise accelerator who actually Peaceful Fruits, who end up being featured on Shark Tank. And what they do is they create what I say is a much healthier version of roll-ups. But they also have a partnership with different farmers in the Amazon to properly source their fruit for those kind of fruit roll-ups. In addition to, they actually partner with another organization that serves those who are I'm going to say this, I'm not going to say this politically correct, but mentally, it's not disabled. Challenged, thank you. The term changed, and I was like, what's the new term? So those that are mentally challenged to actually help with like the packaging and things like that. So you're providing job opportunities for that organization in addition to providing environmentally friendly things. But that has a huge national impact because this organization now is able to serve their products all around the country and providing a much healthier food option for children and their families. So that's an example of how you can actually leverage your space to be able to support other organizations and entities and businesses to be able to grow these social enterprise concepts that can have such a large impact on the community. And, as I said, just being able to help them to understand how to have that social mission beforehand, but giving them the business principles with the curriculum as well.
Yeah. And I want to share an example. My partner and I, we talked as I was preparing for today about, my past experiences as a CFO of a mega church that has space, a lot of people. And she said, well, Larice, I don't see that really taking place primarily in the Cleveland area, the greater Cleveland area, where churches are truly utilizing and stepping out the box and utilizing their space and assisting the entrepreneurs within their organizations day to day. So it's one thing, we all know to preach, but to then send people home with the same problems, with lack of financial literacy, lack of jobs, talked about that, hunger, and items like that. I had the opportunity this past week to travel to Jacksonville, and who's ever heard of the Potter's House in Jacksonville, Florida? Few of you. So the dynamic there where they own the mall. Now they have a restaurant franchise called the Potter's House Cafe. And with that, they utilize that, using space they already had to then employ over 55 members of the church. They've created schools. They've made sure they put people to work within the congregation. So again, utilizing space to make sure they make impact and deal with real everyday issues with job creation, with making sure we keep the youth off the street. So again, I thought that was a great example. And as we tend to travel, we start to see that a lot of these mega churches are getting that. And we think about from a Cornerstone perspective, when you're looking at financial statements, we're seeing that the bottom line of ministries are changing now, where the tithe and offerings are not the thing that is really sustaining these ministries. So these are considerations and conversations that have to take place as we talk about social enterprise in the church. Go right ahead.
And to add to that, we have to think about it. So this is slightly taking my social sea change hat off. But just think about the concept that you have more millennials that are going into the church, and we have more of a social impact and social enterprise mindset.
Yes.
So you don't have as many people giving in the traditional way.
That's right.
Through tithes and offering, but they are giving their money towards things that they're seeing as having a social impact, and that should still be the church in various capacities as well.
Dale?
I just want to add one other thing is the physical space of a church also has changed. One of the things at Trinity happened was in the mid-90s, we took out the pews. And we have chairs that can be moved around. So you can reconfigure the space to what you need it to be for whatever program or concert, whatever. It can be reused by all individuals for all types of different things.
That's good.
So
Great.
that's a very important piece, I think, of this.
Yes, great point, Dale. So Julia, you told us that FMC utilizes a former Catholic campus in the Clark Fulton neighborhood in Cleveland's West Side. How does the FMC's actual property both help and hinder your work?
Oh, that's the heart of it. So by the nature of who God made me to be, I'm a networker and a connector. So I love to take all sorts of different groups that you would even look at and say, like, how in the world might they fit together? and then make it come together for the betterment of the whole and the betterment of our society. So, for example, ever since we got the property, we have a kitchen in the school, and I was like, okay, someday we're going to make it into a commercial level kitchen, because one, it'll be able to, there's a lot of home-based business in our neighborhood. They could actually start to use that space to be able to then grow their business, but we would also then be able to increase again our income with that. And so we've had multiple phases of our kitchen. So initially it was just a space that it was like, we literally went to the Habitat Restore and we got cabinets from there and we hung them in there. And we found used appliances and we put them in the space. And for years that sufficed for the one school that we had in there. And then 2 years ago, we were able to have enough funding that we were able to take it to the next level in terms of what we were able to put in there and start to move it more and closer to this commercial level. So now with 2 schools in there, we've had the 2 schools together. We were like, if we get a non-commercial level 3 kitchen, really sounds glamorous, doesn't it? Then we're going to be able to do so much more. And then what also happens is both of those schools don't have to get their own license for the kitchen, but the license is actually in the name of the Family Ministry Center. And then we literally share our equipment, we share our caterer. So all of our costs and our overhead just dramatically come over, as well as everybody collectively is responsible for keeping it clean, the policies, the procedures with it. And one of the things that's underpinned everything that we've done is we've utilized volunteers and folks from the suburbs that want to come and serve as much as possible. So even with now the catered food program, we supplement that with food that the suburbanites will help donate to make the meals more robust as well, with that. So it's been really, really creative. So they've been involved in the actual design of it. And yesterday, we actually had our final health inspection, and we are now a commercial level 3, non-commercial level 3 kitchen. So that was like a big milestone for us for that. But that's just one example of how you take the buildings and say what is really the best and highest use of this. And then another one of our interesting partners is we do a lot of work with Baldwin Wallace. They have an outstanding civic engagement area out there. So I'm on my 3rd intern from there that's doing a project that's going to benefit actually all the partners. But then they also have a jacket philanthropy program there where the students are actually learning grant writing. And so the one school and then our dance program 2 times in a row got a jacket philanthropy grant so that the dancers could actually teach therapeutic dance movement to the middle school kids that have a hard time even understanding how do I express anger, how do I express frustration, etc. So the students, instead of having gym time, they would actually go to a dance class and be able to learn how to express these emotions together.
So, Julia, because, you really unpacked that and have had some success with that, we have a lot of people out here listening that are from other ministries, explain that process, because you may have a group of individuals who may have space but can't see it the way you saw it. What type of, did you have to put a group together, an advisory committee? How did that start to get it to where it's at today? Kind of go through the steps of that.
Well, I would say the steps of it would be literally, it was years and years and years of building relationships in Cleveland and being present in the Cleveland area and just always being out there, networking, meeting people. And when we first got the Family Ministry Center, the way I would describe it was like I had this silver tray that kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger as God just brought me pieces and parts. And then my brain is, and it's probably because of my entrepreneurial kind of orientation, is always look at these pieces that just don't even seem to fit together. How do they fit together? And just bringing folks together to just brainstorm in terms of what the possibilities could be. So and then with that, you take, the best ministry and the best, I think, social enterprises, it ultimately comes out of all these, out of relationships. So you've got to really look at where are your relationships and where's the, social capital that you already have, and then how do you leverage those things, as well as in your own community, wherever you're at, in terms of are there, as Jeff has already addressed, are there assets that are already going on that if you could grow that asset to a whole nother place, there's a fledgling job training program, if they actually had the space to go someplace else, and then you actively seek them out and say what would a potential partnership be with. And then it's just in the whole nonprofit world, the concept of leveraging is absolutely huge. So then how are you also not only leveraging that you could help grow that, but then through suburban relationships bring those. And I've just watched, literally, a lot of it's just been, one of my philosophies is the best ministry comes out of a place of rest, and you just watch what God does. Like you just, like literally you pray into it, and it's not just like that, oh, it just so happens, but it's like you've got the eyes to constantly be seeing, what is it that God might want to do with these things that you want to do.
Thanks for sharing that. So I'm going to open this up to the full panel. How does others relate to how property intercedes with business of social enterprise? Anybody? I take two takers on that? Okay, the question was, how do others relate to how property intercedes with business of social enterprise? Okay. Okay.
I'll just start. So it's going to be weird that I'm answering this because if you listen to what's happening up here, you have institution with space and repurposing that, institution with space, repurposing that, accelerator, helping people to think about that, practitioner. We don't have a building right, that we own, but one of the social enterprises that we've launched into, so Common Threads was one, that thrift store, but I talked about meaningful wage jobs and safe, stable places to live. So in the community where we are, where God has placed us, literally going and taking on blighted properties in the community and repurposing them. So for us, even though we don't own the building and seeing that as, okay, we have this asset already, we see assets in the community that we are in that aren't being used to their full potential. And so if we can go and take on those blighted properties and repurpose them for good kingdom use, for community use, that very much is an extension, of course, of mission. And it's literally taking the thing that society and the community sees as the problem, right, this blighted property, this zombie property, this is where crime happens, this is where, people come in for drug addiction, this is where the problem is, and literally use that as the vehicle for spiritual renewal and community stabilization, just in a neighborhood and in a pocket. So to see not just the programs, but the physical spaces in your community, whether you own them or not, as something potentially that you could own, right, for a kingdom good. And so to not just say, okay, what do I have today if God's given you something fantastic, but maybe there's something in your community that no one wants to touch, that there can be a vision forward toward what could this be. And if you're building partnerships and relationships and you're listening to the community, well, I guarantee you there are ideas for what can happen. There are people with vision in your community for what those spaces could be or what they could do. And then you get around, with some other entrepreneurs, you get around Sea Change, and they can help you figure out things like that. So for me, seeing all physical space as a vehicle for advancing kingdom forward and community forward.
Dale.
Being in the center of Cleveland State University's campus, one of the things that came up about 2 years ago was there's a large Muslim population at the university. They did not have a space to go to pray on Fridays. So what we did was we opened up our gallery space up on the second floor above our storefronts, and on an average, every Friday, we have over 75 students come over to use that space. And the reason I say this is we talk about the church and reconfiguring the church or changing that physical space. But also part of that is the relationships that we build in the religious community ecumenically. Part of our hunger ministry, Fairmont Temple, helped us in passing out food, helping with the food. In this case, we're helping the Muslim students being able to do their prayers. That was through the campus ministry. So I think it's the partnerships, it's the reuse of space that is normally not on our radar screen, in essence, in looking at just our community itself. We look outside further into the community for those social needs. The students, those Muslim students, were actually feeling alienated because they didn't have anywhere to go. So it brings them right across the street from the school. So it's also looking at the pieces of it that we're all God's. As part of our baptismal covenant in the Episcopal Church is to respect the dignity of all human beings. So I think that all plays a big piece in not only the social, the business, everything. We have to think, that we look at someone that they're different from us, but we have to look beyond that. So.
Okay, thank you, Dale and Jeff. I'm going to end on this, and then we're going to open up for dialogue with the crowd. So, any additional thoughts on the intersection of mission, ministry, and social enterprise?
I'm just going to throw in one thing, is I think when you're looking to do this work, it's really, really important that I'm kind of unique in terms of some of my skill set, that I had a background in renovations, rehabs, property management, as well as ministry, and I'm very, very relational. But I've also done that now at great cost over the last 8 years, because to manage that size of property takes an incredible amount of time and resources, as well as then when you're managing people and you want to love people well, that takes incredible time. So when you're starting these efforts, I mean, the biggest thing I would say is really look at how are you going to staff it in such a way that you're going to come up with, here's the vision, and here's the rules, and then you agree that you're going to play by those rules for a really long time, and then collectively you're going to sit down and say, here's what we're learning, and here's how those rules need to change. So where I've been at, the rules have evolved and continue to evolve, and when you're an entrepreneur, it makes it really, really hard when you're constantly having to respond to the rules as they continue to change. So it's an incredible balance and cognitive tension that oftentimes happens between the property and the social enterprise part of what you're doing.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to turn it back over to Maria. And don't go too far, okay.
With the panel's indulgence, if we may, can we have our guests grab their lunches and then we'll do the Q&A while you're having lunch? If you don't mind sitting up there not eating? Okay, if everyone, our lunch is provided by Bloom in the back if you want to help yourselves to lunch, and then come back and sit down and we'll do our Q&A over lunch. One quick observation though, when you talk about property and social enterprise, when we talk with churches about the use of their property, we always start with mission first. Always. The crucial element, what is it you're trying to do? And then how do you plug in the real assets to make it happen? But please, grab lunch and we'll do Q&A while you're eating.
To add a couple comments before we jump into that segment, so please feel free.
So the last question was, is there anything to add on the intersection of these things? And you guys said this is the biggest passion of my life. It took a decade to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I think I might be onto something. But one thing that I've learned in the practitioner space, again, we were a small organization. We didn't have advantage relationships. We didn't have grants. We didn't have a lot of other things. It was literally like bootstrap hustle, entrepreneurship. And the thing that we've learned in social entrepreneurship, whatever you want to do, good business, great business has to be what you lead with. The social good that you're going after, in my opinion, is the kicker, right? You cannot expect people to patron a business that is, well, I really care about this cause, so I'm willing to accept mediocrity in the execution of that business. You win on it being an outstanding business, and then when people learn about the cause, it draws them in deeper. So I'd say lead with great business, and I see you're eating an amazing lunch from Bloom Bakery, yes. Right? So you have to have a good business. It's not enough for the church to say, well, we're the church, you should support us. We do good things, you should support us. It's got to be an excellent, excellent business. And then the second thing is I always get asked, is it business, is it ministry, is it mission, what is it? And I say it's both, always, all the time. They say, well, one has to take a back seat at some point. And for us to be true to our cause, when you think about profit, planet, people, and then the personal spiritual aspects, seriously, every day, if the decision is not checking all of those boxes, it is not the right decision, and we have to wait until we have something that is good for our staff, our employees, our customers, our people in the surrounding community. If I have to compromise on any one of those, right, it's not the right solution in this particular space of social enterprise. So just an encouragement to any social entrepreneurs out there. There's a great community flourishing, and that lead with great business, and know that your heart will come through, but the great business has to be first.
Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. Thank you. And again, don't forget that within the brochure you received is all of our panelists' information. So they gave a lot of great tips and things to follow. So if you want to follow up, make sure you utilize this great brochure with great information within it. So we're going to go into our Q&A section. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we'll bring a mic around to you. So, hello. How are you?
I want to thank each one of you for your presentations. You had came from different perspectives, but it kind of all came together at the end. I want to say that first. I have 2 questions. My first question, and Julie and
Dale?
you know,
Jeff?
Jeff, you led into it, but I want to ask it to everybody. The whole issue of staffing, how you start and how you staff up. You know, you spoke to it a little bit. That's the first thing. And the second question is more particular about, I want to know more about the MVP, but I'd like to know about the staffing from each one of you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
How you develop, how you got,
So the Family Ministry Center is run with 2 full-time people and 1 maintenance worker 18 hours a week and 1 other one that does anywhere between 6 to 12 hours a week. So, I mean, you got to hire people who are incredibly, like Jeff said, like they're incredibly passionate about what the work's about, but they're also incredibly like skilled, with that. And then you got to get people in terms of that are going to be able to know how to bring their resources around them to like leverage the heck out of stuff. So, I mean, it's just been 2 staff, but it's just in terms of, like, part of the reason I could be here today is I've got a very competent retiree sitting at a desk greeting people as they come in and keeping things flowing, and then it's been through other, like, project-based work or just, like I said, BW interns or whatever else we've been able to leverage, but there's been a great cost to it in terms of, in our case, the property has been the thing that sometimes has reared its head more than our ability sometimes to really be about the social enterprise missional part of what we want to do because we have been so thinly staffed.
And you know what, since we have had the opportunity to have lunch today, Five Bloom Bakery, I want you to answer that question as well, please.
Okay, again, what is the question? Staffing?
Staff.
How do we go about staffing? Well, we have 2 different types of staff members, one of which is what Julie was referring to, and it's our professionals that are in place, and they are skilled and they are passionate, and those are 2 things that you need, especially when starting a social mission, which you've learned. And then our other part of our staff are our participants, and all of our participants come from Towards Employment, and I had mentioned earlier they have adversities to employment. So all of our trainees, all of our participants, all of our staff, whatever you'd like to refer them to, all come from Towards Employment. Does that answer your question?
Jeff?
Because we do everything through partnerships as well, is all those partners come with their own staffing as well as then we bring those staffs collectively together to brainstorm, innovate together as well. And like, we didn't start out being in this in terms of job creation, but I could sit down and literally count how many jobs have come to like the neighborhood we're in because of the partners that are there that continue to grow and continue to be able to add staffing.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Daniel.
As Christina was saying, our professional staff, one of the things that's important is that they understand what the mission is for Towards Employment, and also the patience to train, to be part of that. And then when it comes to our participants, it's those that are interested in that career pathway, whether it be culinary or retail, and eventually getting a chance to show us. We put them in a work experience. We pay their salary for 4 weeks and to find out if it's a good fit. And also, it's just not in the culinary. So we have one person right now who is driving for us, who in a year from now is going to want to be a CDL driver. So anything related to those careers involved with Bloom is where we look at, so.
Thank you, Daniel.
So staffing for us so I'll just take the thrift store because that's 37 employees now. We just hired 35, 36, 37 2 weeks ago. 27 of the 37 are directly connected to Building Hope in the City or a ministry partner of Building Hope in the City. So I had never started a business before, never started a thrift store as an engineer. Quickly walked down every thrift store in Northeast Ohio to figure out how you do this, what are the models at work, and then went to every person around the Building Hope table and said, who do you have that is ready? A job is the right next step. And so I think there's some vetting that is helpful. It's not like literally this person, they might need many things before they're ready for a job. It was, I'm trusting you to bring to the table people who the right next step is ready for. And my promise to you is we're going to create a culture of grace that is going to allow them to fail and to fail forward and to continue to do that, and building a financial model. So staffing actually runs out of the financial model of where can we create margin to allow people to fail forward, and if they fail forward fast enough, it looks like progress, and a chance for them to grow. And so we have successfully hired from refugee community, ex-offender community, recovering addict community, single moms. I mean, that's the majority of the people who've been able to come alongside. And then I would say for us, yes, there are professionals around, but it wasn't a start with we have to have these professionals. It was really a mission to can we build into all the staff so that they become the professionals. And so, I mean, I thank God we're at 2 years in, it took 2.5 years. We have 7 leads who can all run that store. They can open, they can close, they can price, they can sell, they can do all functions in addition to department leaders. And among those 7, 5 of the 7 were employees from one of those disadvantaged populations or one of those marginalized populations. And now these are the people who are making the decisions every day to run, operate, and expand the business. So for on our side, building deep into the staff that come and seeing them as the future leaders, as the future expanders of the store. And then, yes, some have gone on to manage competitive stores, some have gone on to be with Fortune 500 companies as team leads. And so if the right next step is something else, great, but we want to try and create those pathways even within our own company, even within retail. Can we do that? So.
Did I answer your questions? Yeah. Okay, no problem. Any other?
Yeah, thank you for your time. This was really fascinating. I run, my name's B, I'm sorry. I run an advocacy nonprofit in Austin, Texas. So we work a lot with legislative process. And I have a particular question for all of you about how you see social entrepreneurship being able to work in partnership with public policy. And in particular, if you've seen yet opportunities to leverage the expertise and community relationships that you build through your entrepreneurship for public policy change. And I'll give you a really specific example. Since you guys are hiring ex-offenders, you get some insight into not just what happens to ex-offenders when they're trying to find a job, but also potentially in some cases what put them in that position in the first place. Does that then feed back into any sort of policy engagement for you, or do you imagine that it may?
We got it.
You want to start?
Dan, yeah.
Towards Employment has several programs. Probably the foundational program that is our reentry population. And I can tell you this, that we have staff on board who are heavily involved with public policy and always looking at the social justice system, what it's like for the reentry population. Most of our Bloom staff are reentry. I can tell you they work with the state. They're trying to get to a point where, say, felony 5s for, drug abuse, nonviolent offenses can be moved to a misdemeanor, where eventually the expungement place can take place. Really at the heart, the social justice aspect and providing ex-offenders an opportunity, because Towards Employment at the end of the day is about second, third, fourth chances. and we really push for that. And you're going to hear from our CEO later, Ms. Jill Rizica, who can really speak to that mission.
Anybody else on that? Okay. Okay, Dale?
Trinity is part of the Greater Cleveland congregations, and it is across the board to different religious organizations. And one of the things is, a few years back, Ohio wanted to discontinue Medicaid. We went to the streets, we went to the churches, we went everywhere. And through that campaign, we were able to get that voted down, that they were not going to do that. So it's the relationships in that case through all religious organizations. So I think that's an important piece of public policy. Also, different things with the Cleveland schools, helping with those issues, and getting out there and being the foot traffic for those issues. So
That's super quick hit. So a quick hit on that from, again, like just coming from like starting businesses. Ohio is not a state that has a lot of the legal vehicles that exist are you're either a really traditional nonprofit or you're a business. And there are many other states, I think there's 34 other states at least with low limit or low level liability corporations, and there's entities that allow you to take on essentially equity investment alongside charitable donation in one legal vehicle to do things. And I think it's a call to all entrepreneurs and businesses to say, run the business with excellence, because I love gray space. Because I think when there's gray space, that's when you can define and you can shape. If the church, if our organizations and institutions can run those businesses with excellence, you then have a voice to shape the legislation that comes to your state and to your communities. So as we run those things with excellence, we can advocate for, but look what happened when we did it this way. Look what happened when we did it this way. If you do that, that's going to hinder us here. And so to do what you do with excellence can create vehicles, and really in Ohio, because there isn't a lot of, the legal vehicles just aren't satisfactory, in my opinion, for all that could be done.
Okay, we'll take a few more questions. Any takers?
Thank you all very much. I find this intriguing and exciting. My name's Sherry. I'm from Minnesota. In Minnesota, like here, we have a lot of churches that are far larger in facility than they now need in terms of the congregational size, and so many of our congregations are beginning to think about ways in which they can use their space to better serve the community while remaining in the space, perhaps. The problem that I often see is that while they have this great vision, what they don't have is the historic relationships within their own community to leverage to get to that vision. So I'm wondering, when I'm speaking to a church like that, what 2 or 3 tips would you have me give them about how to step toward their vision, given that kind of lack of relationship and know-how in their community?
I would just say start where they do have relationships, if they do. And one of the ways that we've done it over and over again is because we are so often bringing in suburbanites, we're bringing churches from all over the country, et cetera, is we literally prayer walked the neighborhood. And one of the things that was like a huge flip for me several years ago is it's not so much about what teams all the time will say, we want to come to serve. And we flipped it now to say it's more about what are really their discipleship goals and how do we come alongside of those things. So I think it's even within the local congregation in terms of, because we've all seen it in terms of, and you could call it a variety of different things, but in terms of there's churches that come in as a very neighborhood-based church typically, and then those folks move to the suburbs or wherever they move, and white flight, whatever you want to call, whatever the source of it might be. But it's literally how do you start developing again the relationships? And so some of the most powerful things I think we've done is when we've been able to find the neighborhood residents that actually will do the tours of the neighborhood through their eyes and their perspective. Then I've done for literally at this point almost 20 years prayer walking in Cleveland, and people will say to me all the time, how do you know what you know? And it's because I've walked these streets for 20 years, and
you see the changes, you see the evolution, as well as like God trusts you with things like in the secret places. But it's like so just getting the people like not just to stay in the building, but say like, we're gonna go out and we're actually gonna like walk this street and we're gonna walk it over and over again, or we're gonna have XYZ people like give us tours, because they'll blow your minds in terms of their perspectives and their insights, as well as even the ideas that they will have. But you gotta take like the tiny little baby steps to do it, to help people start pushing their thinking in a different way.
You know, and I want to speak to that, just being in, you know, working in the church prior, you know, my prior experience. And I would say one thing is we have to think out the box and reevaluate the need, because sometimes we have programs in place that have just traditionally been in place. And I'll give a pure example. You know, I was working with a ministry, they do the food bank, not knowing, and, you know, on a Saturday when they would have individuals come to the church, the ministry, to get, you know, whatever food they were giving out, when they would go load the car, there would be 5 other bags from 5 other pantries for that particular day. So it showed that that was no longer a need for that, you know, that congregation, or, you know, it shouldn't have been their focus. So I would say, one, reevaluate the needs, and then survey the membership and really engage the people that you're serving day to day to figure out what the community needs are, because sometimes we all can understand some ministries will operate sometimes what I call a bubble, and they only try to address things that they think that the community needs, versus really understanding the people are the ones living in the community day to day. So either if they don't have the need, their family members have the need, their friends have the need, or their colleagues. So I would say do that as well. And then I always say is it's in the house. Utilize the membership. Once you find out what the need is, you'll be surprised who you have sitting in the pews that may, you know, run towards employment, may run some of these great organizations, Bloom Bakery, or et cetera. So once the needs are put on the table, then you'll find out a lot of times a lot of these partnerships you're looking for may already be in the house. So that's just some things I learned from just past experiences as well.
The other one I was just going to add really quickly is that in Luke it talks about a person of peace. And so to really, really have the eyes in the neighborhood to identify those people of peace. And so one of the ones for the last couple of years that's one of my favorite ones, it's actually a Building Hope story, is in the neighborhood that they're most focused on right now. It's a taxidermist that lives in that neighborhood that is really literally the person of peace. So sometimes it can be a homeless person that's even been like camped in that neighborhood for a really, really long time. So so just challenge your people to go out and start just even like having the conversations to identify that person of peace, because that person of peace will just open all sorts of doors for you.
Yes. Any other feedback? So a church without walls, right?
Right. Amen.
Okay, amen. So we'll take one last question. Do we have one taker? Okay. I'll take your last one as well. So we'll take 2. Okay.
But I had to.
Oh, you had 2? We'll
Yeah.
take you to 1 then.
Okay. Oh, no.
You got to share. So no, go ahead.
No, the one question is just a real quick answer. What is the start date for the undesigned red line at Trinity Cathedral?
Next week.
Okay. The 7th.
I think the 7th is a reception with both the dean and the bishop.
Okay, great.
So that's when it will start. It'll be there for 6 weeks. I think it goes
Okay.
till December 20th.
Thank you.
So you're very welcome. And it's open during the day. We'll have hours during the day.
your
and the
answer
evening.
too long. You've taken up my time now.
It's quite an exhibit, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
No, okay,
yeah.
thank
As
you.
a docent, it's really overwhelming.
Yes.
So,
Thank you,
anyway.
thank you.
welcome.
I want to thank you all for being here. I'm a member of this congregation. My name is Dale Sledge. From Hope in the Cities?
Building
Building
Hope
Hope in the Cities, thank you for your description of your staff and of who the participants of your programs are. I thank you for that. And I was wondering about, what do congregations do, the churches where their physical space is outside of the urban center and not on a bus line, right? So, and I think that kind of got answered in, what are the needs in your immediate community, because even rural communities do have situations. But my big question is for Ms. Jones.
from Bay Village, and I think it's really beautiful for that suburban church to have come in and planted and stayed. And my question is about your neighborhood more so than about your ministry. I heard on public radio recently a conversation about some mixed income housing coming into the neighborhood around Metro and Clark Fulton, and there being a problem about perhaps some of the people that you are doing capacity building and shalom building with ending up displaced with this supposedly mixed income housing where the low income entrances are going to be around the back and that kind of thing. So I just wonder, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that and if you all are aware.
Thank you.
Yeah, in this case, Jeff and I can both answer, and I'm going to have Jeff actually start because we're both working with housing in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so I've known Julie 10 years, saw this vision come to reality, and the neighborhoods we're working in are that Clark Fulton Stockyards neighborhood. It's Ward 14. You know, for us, at least just on this level, praise God, there's a Latina councilwoman for the first time in a 40%, Hispanic neighborhood. For the first time, we have a Latina councilwoman who's there, so we're grateful for that. So that's a very good thing with the interest of the community. But yeah, I mean, hospitals are known to be one of the largest gentrifiers of large cities. And so as this happens, one thing that we're doing, Building Hope in the CDC in this, our effort, Good Neighbors and Company, that social enterprise, is an effort to preserve a beachhead of affordability for great people that we've known for 10, 15 years in that community who are getting displaced. For those of you who are familiar with the Near West Side, Ohio City came up, Detroit Shoreway came up, Tremont came up, and so the rising tide does raise all ships. And so, and what happened in 2008 was you have a lot of landlords that are absentee. They're from Texas, they're from China, they're from other places, they don't know what's happening. They go on Zillow, and Zillow pulls in the comps. Their algorithm pulls in comps from 0.8 miles away, Ohio City, where you can get an efficiency $1,600 a month, right? In Clark Fulton rents, we're $400 a month. And now they say, I can get $800 a month. And so this is what's happening. So our effort is 60 homes over the next decade, because we're small, but 60 homes over the next decade to preserve this beachhead of affordability, and then wrap those tenants with care and support, and mobilize those neighbors in community development to be able to do more. The other thing I think is really important to note is that the CDC, the Community Development Corporation, like if you're in Cleveland, your neighborhood has one, you can be advocates with them, get to know them. I think we have an amazing one over in that neighborhood. The Metro West CDC, Ricardo Leon's the director, a great staff from that community, and I think they're doing the best they can to balance maybe some things that had already started to take place before they were in charge, and to manage those things with the needs of the community. And at the same time, you want investment in the community. It's a needed thing, but to make sure the community has a voice at the table. So that CDC is undergoing a master planning process, and I think my opinion is they're doing it a right way by inviting a lot of people to the table.
Yeah, I would just say, I said early in my comments that because we've been there now for 8 years, and then I've been working on the Near West Side for nearly 2.5 decades, is there's a lot of places, I have a place at the table that a lot of white middle-class suburbanites would normally have the table. And one of my funny ones is in the last year, I was having a conversation with my niece that's at Xavier University, and I was talking about my hood. And she goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, the people in the neighborhood have given me permission to call it my hood because I've been part of it, that they consider me part of them at this point because they know how much, I love them and I've paid my dues to be there, but sometimes you got to give a voice to the voiceless. And so there's tables that both Jeff and I end up getting to be at where we can say, when you talk affordable housing and you say $700 a month, those aren't the people we're working with. We're talking $400 a month. And when XYZ things happen, you need to understand the implications of where that's been at. So I end up places where I'm just only by the grace of God can I be there. So it goes back to kind of the public advocacy question even earlier, is it's really, really hard sometimes when you're as passionate as we are to know when to keep your mouth shut and when to open your mouth and be that trumpet cry for the people in these communities that for so long have not had a voice, as well as then even call on them to share their story, because their stories do break hearts and they bring about a breakthrough that then can bring about incremental change.
Okay. We have one last question.
Hi, my name is Jeff Cheney, and I have a question. How are your organizations impacting the special needs population? I've heard you guys speak about employing offenders, and just wondering, how do you tackle the problem of special needs organizations and individuals who are looking for jobs?
So for Sea Change, I think the one way that we're able to do that as a social enterprise accelerator is, one, by actually opening up ideas to those who may have special needs and have a social enterprise idea, that they can actually participate in our program. We help them in building out their idea. So that way they're in a place where they're able to take their mission, but being able to create more of a business infrastructure behind it so it can be more sustainable and scalable. Then the second way that we've been able to do that as well is then being able to support social enterprises who also partner with organizations that have special needs. So I mentioned, the one organization, Peaceful Fruits, earlier, but we have other organizations who've done something similar too, where they've been very intentional about partnering with organizations that support, special needs and providing job opportunities for them. So I think that there's a way of being able to do that in various ways. Another way too is being able to partner with an organization that specifically supports those with special needs and helping them to actually come up with social enterprise ideas as well. So that way it's being able to grow and expand. And that's kind of one of the things that we talked about with, our, for Sea Change affiliate programming, is the fact that we can allow organizations like those who have special needs or churches or other entities to be able to just simply take that curriculum and tweak it and revise it, customize it for their specific population so that we can really have a larger impact. So the same way that we were able to generate over 2.3 million and create over 130 jobs within about 3 or so years, we can do that on such a larger scale by providing that type of resources and curriculum to help people to start more social enterprises.
It's a great question. Let me just say this, Towards Employment has many programs. Last year, Jill will probably speak to this more, but we placed over 600 individuals in employment, many of those that were ex-offenders. Career tracks, whether they be CNC operators, CDL, construction, culinary, healthcare, into jobs. And I think, if I'm right, most of them, over 80% of them, were still in those jobs a year later. Okay? And where we recruit from is all over the place, including churches, where we recruit individuals to come to the program. So I will let Jill finish up on that when she gets up here, but that's just basically what we're about.
Okay, we'll end with Julia.
I'm just going to make a...
Okay.
It doesn't have to do with the Family Ministry Center, but I just want to make a plug for Kara Marker Daly on the west side of Cleveland has opened really recently a bed and breakfast where it's special needs adults that are actually running the bed and breakfast, and she's using it as a training site to do so and as a social enterprise, which is really, really exciting. But Bay Presbyterian, our former senior pastor, about 5 years before he retired, he literally had as one of the goals for the church was that he wanted to see Bay Presbyterian incubate 11 new entrepreneurial efforts to be a gift to the larger body of Christ. So for those of you that are pastors in your church, you have incredible power in terms of the messaging that you send to your church. And when he went to retire, I said, Hugh, do you realize we've incubated more than 11 in those last 5 years? Because you created an atmosphere to make that happen. And one of those was Key Ministry, which was what we were doing with kids with special needs. That's now exploded literally around the world and has also evolved into mental health issues. And part of with that, now we have children that we serviced when we were kids that are now adults with special needs, and their parents are starting to get concerned about their long-term housing needs. And they're creating another nonprofit that is actually now purchasing housing and figuring out a way that that's part of the legacy for those kids, that they will have long-term housing to do it. So just take these little seeds and just keep building on them. And God brings the water and blesses them.
Thank you, thank you. If everybody can give it up for our esteemed panel today. I want to thank everybody for being a part of it.